Umberto Eco loved mysteries, secrets, conspiracies, and the more outlandish they were, the more he loved them. He was not a professional novelist. He was one of the most respected semioticians, which means a philosopher who investigates the meaning and the symbols and the mechanisms of human communication. He was an academic, and his field of inquiry was philosophy, in particular medieval philosophy. His dissertation was a seminal research on the aesthetics of St. Thomas Aquinas. But he was the opposite of the stodgy, pedantic academic who is all books and no charm and no life. He was full of wit and tremendous interest in popular culture. He wrote on every so-called epiphenomenon, from Madonna to the Beatles to Apple computers versus Windows. Semiotics or semiology is the interpretation of signs, the signs that consciously or unconsciously we use to communicate about the external reality or about ourselves. The way we dress, the way we speak, the words we use, and the interpretation of what they mean and what constitutes a signal, a message. And he was in love with riddles, with the kind of secrets that are enclosed and coded into messages that one has to decipher. And here we come to the name of the rose. Now, what is the meaning of the title? Well, we discover the meaning of the title when we finish the book and we come to the very, very last word, which is name. From the very beginning, from the title, we have a secret message, cryptic message with a sexual connotation. Let's jump to the story. The story is told by Azzo. Azzo is derived from the character of Dr. Watson, who is the sidekick of the famous detective Sherlock Holmes. The structure, the narrative structure of the book is based on Sherlock Holmes, where Watson, Dr. Watson, tells the stories, the incredible stories of his very smart friend Sherlock Holmes. So it's implicit that here we are going to have a mystery that is going to be deciphered and revealed by the use of strict rational logic. The author of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and Edgar Allan Poe, the American writer, together introduce into literature the concept of rationality and logic. In literature, up to that point, particularly evil was always the product of some kind of metaphysical force, the devil, the spirits, something that could not be comprehended rationally. And this is how science, modern science, late 19th century science, begins to penetrate popular literature. Sherlock Holmes is the ultimate example of rationality, and by the way, you will find it interesting that in order to enhance his already tremendous observational abilities, he uses a substance, namely he smokes cocaine, which at the time, incidentally, was legal. William of Baskerville is the combination of two characters, one fictional and the other one a real one. The first one is Sherlock Holmes, and we can see that by the name that Eco gave to William. He calls him William of Baskerville. One of Conan Doyle's most famous stories is titled The Baskervilles Hound, and it's a story of these incredibly bloody crimes that take place in this scary and forgotten land in England with fog and moors, the typical environment where you would locate a ghost story. And instead, it turns out that the killer is a hound, a dog that went mad. The other character is real, is William of Ockham, a monk in the 13th or 14th century, who was famous for his borderline heresy of applying strict logic to religion and interpretation of the scriptures. You can imagine how well it went with the church. The church tried to capture him, to try him, and in any case he had to spend his life in hiding. The character of Ubertino that shows up in The Name of the Rose reminds me very much of William of Ockham. If you have ever heard of Ockham's razor, is his method of inquiry. And he posits that once you eliminate all the less probable causes of an event, what you're left with is with the obvious cause. It is the reduction to simplicity. The simplest answer is always the correct one. And now the location. It is an abbey, but the most important thing is the fact that it contains this gigantic library. The reference is to one of the most famous short stories of the 20th century, The Library of Babel, by the Argentine writer Borges. Eco loved and was very deeply influenced by Borges. Well, everybody who reads loves Borges. It's not a writer you can forget easily. The Library of Babel is the allegory of infinity, and the universe. In this library that contains every single book or every single word ever written in the history of humanity, there is a single point where two letters combined together point to the secret of the universe. And this idea of the secret being located in a point precise in the world has very much to do with the Hermetic tradition, the study of the occult, the mystical tradition, and the search for unity in God, not through the common ways of religion, but through the process of kenosis, knowledge, which means from the inside. The way we explain traditionally history, or the way we explain religion, tends to be a simplification. There is a parallel explanation, which is very much kept secret. It's only for initiates, for the few people who can understand and who go through the rigor of very extensive practice to discover and to reach illumination. It is the process of Buddhist monks, for instance. It was also present in Western culture, but it has been quashed and suppressed by the formal, the official religions. But it exists. And there are people who cultivate this type of internal meditative inquiry. So in the Library of Babylon, there is this secret. This is what Borges said. And we know that in the library of this abbey, there is a secret that will never be revealed. And that's the big tease by Eco, the fact that at the end, the secret will not be revealed. And the implication for Eco is that it's because it doesn't exist. Of course, Aristotle's books did exist in the past, but the message is that people look for secrets that in reality do not exist. The key character is, in The Name of the Rose, is the monk Jorge. As if we needed it, this is one more clue about Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentine writer that I just mentioned to you, who was blind. Eco is not using one for the other, but he's making a reference to make it more overt. Borges really has mythical stature among readers, and maybe it is because of his blindness that he was able to see beyond the physical world, and maybe he really saw something with what for the Hindus, for instance, is the third eye of enlightenment and consciousness. So the book, and to an extent also the film, are full of these tantalizing bits of references, and this is the tension that the book is based on. You have metaphysical beliefs, evil, the devil, the presence of malignant entities in our lives, and the rational analysis and observation of the physical reality. This is the clash that we have in this book, rationality versus blind faith. Rationality is also technology, which is why when William arrives at the Abbey and unpacks his bags, we see three instruments: the hourglass, the astrolabe, and an angle measurer. I think it's called an inclinator or something like that. These are tools that allow him to observe the motion of the stars. Clearly, we are dealing with astronomy, which was a heresy. Astronomy bordered with astrology, the idea that you could scientifically analyze the motion of the stars and deduct about the nature of the world was anathema, was strictly forbidden. You do not challenge authority and the scriptures, period. Because the new ideas about the cosmos were challenging the dogma of the church. The church believed firmly that the earth was at the center of the universe and the sun revolved around it. It couldn't be otherwise, because obviously God placed us in the center of his universe. When it was discovered and proven scientifically that that's not the case, well, the person who first gave the demonstration, the proof, Galileo Galilei, was accused of heresy. He had to recant and ended up spending the last 30 years of his life under house arrest. Now, the fact that William talks about having recanted in order to survive, well, that very much matches the history of Galileo, who discovers the motion of the planets and is condemned by the church. Let's not forget that in the year 1600 exactly, the church burns in one of Rome's most important squares Giordano Bruno, a friar who was accused of heresy and never recanted. And to this day, the church would like to take down the statue of Bruno in Campo dei Fiori. Another tool, the glasses. The glasses and optics. Optics, the science of lenses, refraction, light. This also was considered potentially heretic because it allowed you to see things in a way that God didn't mean to. So you would be able to see things that are not there, or you would see them in a distorted way, which is not what God meant. And now, the plot, finally. We are in the 1300s. This period is called Lower Middle Ages, and it is a prelude to the Renaissance that will follow. The period between the fall of the Roman Empire, 476, and the First Crusade in 1099 is referred to as the Higher Middle Ages. In the 1300s, we already are in a moment that is actually more closely related to what will be the Renaissance than the mentality and the culture of the previous centuries. So the plot, finally. William is a Franciscan monk who believes the church should be poor. They are looked at with suspicion by the power, because the power is not the institution of the church, because they're not interested in their notions of poverty. They are very much in love with their power and wealth. So they are looked at with suspicion as potentially heretics. The debate is extremely important because William has to defend the position and the interpretation of their order against the interpretation put forth by the hierarchy of the church. If he fails, they will be excommunicated, considered heretics, and sentenced to death. Topic of the debate: did Jesus own his own clothes, yes or no? And based on the answer, there will be a verdict rendered. Is the position of the Franciscan order in line with the dogma of the Catholic Church? This is the question. This may sound like a bogus issue to us, but underneath the answer there was an ideology, a philosophy. It would be like going in front of the Supreme Court of the United States today and state that no, there is no such thing as the right to private property. Under the wrong circumstances of a dictatorial state, an argument like that could be enough to make you an enemy of the state. Do you want another example? Not long ago, people who argued against the right to own slaves in this very country could risk not being prosecuted by the authority, but certainly they exposed themselves to very high risk in the community where they lived. Subplot, or maybe the major plot, is the fact that in this abbey crimes are being committed, murders, and there is a reason to this madness. William happens to be in the abbey and is asked to investigate. The understanding by the friars, by the monks, is that evil is in the abbey and is causing mayhem. William, applying his power of observation, concludes that no, that there is a logic and a rational explanation. The third subplot, the third level, is Bernardo. Bernardo is invited specifically to investigate the murders. He was not part of the delegation from Rome to argue with William. He wasn't scheduled to show up, but because of what is going on right there, they need an inquisitor to find the truth. He comes in and he is convinced that there is a metaphysical explanation. The devil has penetrated the abbey through some of the people who are there. Who are they? 2 previous heretics and the only woman in the book and the movie who's obviously a witch. So here are the 3 levels, or the 3 plots that are mixed all together, and clearly the convergence point is William. It is William that brings all 3 strands together and weaves them into a coherent narrative. There is what is called an antifact, and it is the relationship between Bernardo and William. Bernardo wants to destroy William because he believes William is a heretic. He had a chance before when he defeated William in a debate. In order to save his life, William had to recant. Now he has a second chance and he is not going to miss out.